Will Cook try and get him in singles? Jadeja is into him now. And he cuts at this. He's going to get one of those singles as it goes to backward point. He moves to 97. The crowd applauding. Oh, there's overthrows. Oh, my word, that's going to run away to the boundary. It is. Cook's done it. He's reached his 100 in his final test match. What an astounding achievement for England's leading run scorer of all time.
Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of the One Stump Short Podcast. It's been a while since we recorded, over a year in fact, but after a pretty successful summer for the England cricket team, it seemed like a good time to get back on the horse. Lucky enough to be joined by BBC Test Match Specials Daniel Norcross on this episode, and I started by asking Daniel what he thought of England's summer exploits.
Oh Rob, what are we to make of it? It's extraordinary, isn't it? We've spent most of the summer complaining about problems at the top of the order, not knowing who the opener should be or who should bat at number 3, cogitating over selection conundrums like Rashid and Butler when he first came in the side. And there's always been this sort of gnawing sense that England are a team very much in flux and a batting order that's sort of entirely unshaped at the moment. And yet, what have they done? They've played 7 test matches. They've won 5 of them. They lost the first one and they lost one at Trent Bridge when I think they had by far the conditions. They've also been lucky, they've won tosses. They've been able to bowl at the right times at Lord's, for example, and again at the Ageas Bowl. But it's very hard to criticise too much, isn't it? They've rung the best out of Jimmy Anderson again. English conditions obviously suit him and they suit the team generally. So, it's been thrilling, it's been exciting. We've seen some brilliant cricket. The number one side in the world has not just put up a good fight. I mean, there's an argument that says had they won a couple of other tosses, had the weather conditions just been a little bit more favourable to them at certain points, they could have won matches. They were really close to winning the Edgbaston Test again at the Ageas Bowl, and the last test was closely fought, went through the last hour. So, it's been exactly what you'd want to see, isn't it, as a cricket fan, if you're an England cricket fan, because you've had great, tight, close contests, and your side comes out 4-1 winners. I'm not sure that tells all the story, though.
No, and as you mentioned, there's still questions to be answered of the England side, certainly in the test arena. They had some wonderful one-day games, white ball games with India as well, of course, but the test team is, as you said, it's made the best of the English conditions. As other people have said, they seem to win those key battles or get performances at key junctures in the series. And you mentioned Edgbaston, where of course Sam Curran was so pivotal. He had 4 for 74 in the Indian first innings, 63 runs in the England second innings, and that was huge in terms of that game. And as you said, it could very easily have gone the other way.
Well, it really could. I mean, he's been a bit of a revelation, really. I've seen him a lot over the last 3 or 4 years, since he came into the Surrey side, age 17. And, I've always thought he was a hugely talented cricketer. I expected him to play for England. I didn't think it would come quite this quickly, but he's been transformed, I think, this season from last year. His bowling, whilst, useful, accurate, handy, has just taken on a kind of different form now. I mean, he's getting to move the ball both ways. He doesn't just have to rely on a new ball. And with the bat, that was genuinely revelatory stuff playing for England in those incredibly crucial moments. He is quite rightly the man of the series because he came in at moments when England were dead and buried, it looked like, at Edgbaston, and in terrible trouble at the Ageas Bowl, and batted with so much maturity, so much technical skill as well, actually. And you could sort of see a batsman developing there, a batsman that England again have created another, or are going to have use of at least, another number 6 batsman and really handy bowler. It's not solving some of the other issues. I saw it described once as, I think it was today, as England are managing to win test matches a bit like a football team managing to win the league whilst having a really porous defence, which never normally happens, And it's that top 3 that is the big concern. You touched on white ball cricket as well. And, we shouldn't forget that. I guess it's because all the test matches have come at the end of the season. We're focusing on that. But England's white ball cricket's in a magnificent state. If you take yourself back to the India ODI series, when they came along and, won some T20s, performed well in the first ODI, it was a sort of, hang on, maybe England isn't as good as they think they are. That Australia series is a mirage, and we'd sort of forgotten that England had won in New Zealand and had won in Australia on their pitches. But that England one-day series side is absolutely fantastic, and playing in their own conditions next year, they've got a genuine chance of winning the World Cup. So amidst all the sort of keening and wailing and gnashing of teeth about how we're going to find now 2 openers and a number 3 to play in the Test team, let's not forget that sort of really is the only major problem England have got at the moment. They've got a settled middle order. They've got 2 keepers to choose from. They've got batting depth from forward all the way down to 9. Moeen Ali came back superbly in the series. Their 2 old stagers show no signs of retiring from the Test team. And the one-day side is so settled that you could pick 11 out of 13 players, and it wouldn't really matter which ones were injured. If you took a 13-man squad and any 2 of them were injured, England wouldn't be in crisis. So, that's probably the only thing that England have got to fixate on. Somehow, being English cricket fans, we fixate on that to the exclusion of remembering in what good shape the rest of the national team is,
Is it a case that maybe in the past, as you said, it's maybe a very English thing, that we've always held the Test team and Test cricket in that much higher regard than white ball cricket, partly because we were, apart from a spell in the very early 90s with Gooch and co, a little bit indifferent at white ball cricket until much more recently, when extra emphasis has been put on the white ball game. They've looked for white ball specialists, and therefore it's become a much more focused and specialised area within English cricket. Is it simply that we have that heritage of prizing Test cricket above all else, and it sometimes obscures other things we're actually very good at?
Well, I think so. I think it's certainly partly that. I think it's a slightly complicated issue. I'm sort of trying to explain why. English one-day cricket has been diabolical for 23 years, really, from 1992 to 2015. I mean, let's not forget, they nearly won in 92, the World Cup. They should have won in 87. They were in the final in 79, in the semi-final in 83. So, English one-day cricket was fine, really. And then there's been that hideous sort of 23 years when it's been abysmal and underachieving. That, I think, has managed expectations of English cricket fans. But also, actually, I was sort of trying to think to myself, if Owen Morgan retired, and there's no disrespect to Owen Morgan, but if Owen Morgan retired just before the last of a 5-match bilateral series in a one-day tournament, having won the World Cup, let's imagine, let's sort of crystal ball gaze and say England win the World Cup next year, or get to the final if you like. And Owen Morgan's got the most number of runs for England. He's a legendary white ball cricketer and captain, and he decides he's going to retire. Would the crowd at that last game be anything like as desperate, nervous, anxious to get him over the line, to get him to 100 or to get him to 50 or whatever? They wouldn't. And I think this is true the world over. This isn't just England. I think you'll find that one-day players, predominantly one-day players, and achievements in one-day cricket are fabulous for fans as entertainment. And we go along to the game and we love it. And it gets bums on seats and it drives money into the game. And it also, unfortunately, drives the administrators thinking slightly too much. But where the fan is, and this is a fan the world over, Indian cricket fans are obsessed with Tendulkar's Test match record. They're obsessed. They can tell you exactly how many Test runs he's got, how many centuries he's got. They're obsessed with Gavaskar and Kapil Dev and Dravid in just the same way as Australians. I mean, you ask an Australian fan about a great player's record, and they'll think instantly of their Test record. They'll think of Ponting and Waugh in the Test arena. They won't think of them and rattle off their white ball stats, because essentially what you're doing is 2 different things, I think, in cricket. As I sort of alluded to, you're entertained in a white ball game, and it's great fun. But you engage cerebrally with your crowd and your spectators when you play Test cricket. And that was made so manifest at the Oval in this last Test we've had. I've never seen a crowd as engaged in something that's essentially futile. I mean, let's be clear. The bilateral series that England had already won. So the result of the game was sort of nonsensical, but what this man, Alistair Cook, meant, and indeed on the last day, what Jimmy Anderson means and continues to mean to English fans, willing him to get that 564th wicket, willing Cook to get that 100. There was an intensity in the relationship between the spectator and the player in the Test arena that you just won't ever see, I don't believe, in one-day cricket, because it's not the same thing. Test cricket isn't actually about entertainment as such. It may tangentially entertain you at times, but it does more than that for you. It sort of absorbs you in much the same way as, when you watch a box set, and you watch 63 episodes of Breaking Bad, it's not all about entertainment. It's about investing in the characters,
Yeah.
Whereas you can watch an action movie, it's an hour and 50 minutes long, and you're there to be blown away by stunts and things flying around all over the place, and you come out exhilarated, and you think, that's great, I want to go back and watch another film by that director. But you don't feel the same way as you feel about, the main character in Breaking Bad. You don't feel this sense of bereavement when the series is over that you also get. Maybe I'm pushing the metaphor too far, but you get my drift.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe the parity between England and India has helped in that sense, because although it was 4-1 to England, really on the field it was a much closer series. And as we've insinuated, England maybe had just had the rub of certain key situations, the toss being key, certainly with England at home, and they can utilise the Andersons and Broads, and those kind of factors come into what's been a brilliant summer, even right up to the fifth day with Rishabh Pant and KL Rahul, and that moment when you just thought, hang on a minute, is this actually going India's way? Are they going to perform this mammoth chase?
Yeah, I mean that was quite spooky, because when you're on commentary, what you're trying not to do is be silly. I mean, you obviously want to connect with the fan inside yourself, but you don't want to say some things that are really daft. And of course, the notion of a team chasing down 464 in 109 overs is objectively, any Test cricket fan will tell you, silly.
Yep.
So don't go there, But I have to say that halfway through between lunch and tea, it started to become a genuine thought. And then at tea time, you thought, good grief, this really could happen. You're always thinking that the new ball would make the difference, but then England weren't taking the new ball, and you're thinking, what's going on here? This could actually be one of the most sensational Test victories of all time. And yeah, exactly. So an enormous credit has to go to India, but they are the best team in the world, And I think if England cricket fans are honest with themselves and said, right, next month, let's all decamp to India and play 5 tests there, then I don't think, if we're honest with ourselves, we'd think that England would put up as much of a contest to India on their patch as India have done to England. And in a sense, that should be the case. It's a national sport in India. It's a much more populous country. There's a lot more money in the game. There's a depth of talent, and it's starting to come through, and we're seeing it. And it's not just being derived from a narrow segment of society. It's now being more broadly found and nurtured across India, which is going to make them a massive force for as long as cricket is played, you would imagine. But it has therefore made for a superb spectacle. And it's all the time, there's this other backdrop to the season, which has been the 100. English cricket needs a new competition. And of course, it's very difficult. And I feel for the ECB a little bit here, because, there are certainly more complex issues at play than are sometimes characterised on Twitter. That Test cricket has just been mammoth this season, and everybody's been so engaged with it. So everybody's turning around and saying, can't you see? Test cricket's fantastic. What's the point of anything else? And of course, it's a bit more complicated than that, because if we're honest with ourselves again, you couldn't play just 12 Test matches in the summer and have no white ball cricket and expect that to be sustainable. So, unfortunately, cricket just is complicated. We've chosen to be in love with the daftest, silliest, most difficult game that has ever been invented. So, that's the way it is, and that's why we get to have these chats, and it enthralls us,
Yeah, I mean, it's on that point, has it helped that it is England-India? They are the number one side in the world. You've got the Kohli-Anderson narrative, which, with all due respect to Quinton de Kock, for example, you didn't have that de Kock versus Anderson narrative running through the South Africa series. And likewise, next summer we go, well, it's the Ashes. I mean, that's an easy sell, regardless of how good or bad England or Australia are. So it's almost as if the 2 summers, this summer just gone and 2019, are easy opportunities,
Yes.
to say, look how great Test cricket is, and you've got the narratives and the easy sell to say, well, it's not really that much wrong, is there?
Well, exactly. I mean, and that's very true. We've always got to be mindful of this, that cricket's very susceptible to cyclical forces. And playing against Australia, yes, and they always play Australia in an odd-numbered year so that it never clashes with, things like a World Cup or a European Championship. Excuse me. And I can't remember the Future Tours programme off the top of my head, but I think there's a sort of move to have India in odd-numbered years as well. It does mean that cricket is going to really come under the cosh when it plays, and this is, I mean this as no slight on the opponents that they'll have in Sri Lanka and New Zealand and the West Indies, Pakistan, South Africa, because, South Africa are a fantastic Test team. They've got some terrific players, like Kagiso Rabada, just their box office, but it is a harder sell because cricket's a marginal sport. So you're not going to fill out Test grounds with New Zealand playing and Sri Lanka playing, and it's a fact. And so you'll end up with this rending of garments and keening and wailing and gnashing of teeth every other year, basically, because when we play in odd-numbered years, we're going to be revelling in the spectacle of it and the space, most importantly, that's been given to it by the media.
Yeah.
And then in the even-numbered years, going to be saying, oh, God, cricket's in an appalling state. So, and we feel like that because we're so passionate about the game itself. So it's only right that we do and that we raise these issues. Now, in 2020, that's when the 100 is due to start, and it's also when free-to-air television is due to start to show more, women's internationals, as well as the new tournament. So getting cricket back on air will be handy. A lot of that will be happening in July, August, after the European Championships, which England's football team may or may not have qualified for. So that gives a little bit of breathing space, a bit of novelty, a bit of, as has been described to me by some panjandrums at the ECB, the power of new. Now, one can be sceptical about it, but you must also, we're also going to be aware that they're dealing with that situation that we complain about, which is that cricket kind of disappears off the radar, usually in even-numbered years, or when England aren't playing either India or Australia. And so they've got to do something about that. Otherwise, you've got this sort of horrible spectacle of, oh, isn't it brilliant? Oh, God, it's not. and that repeats itself over and over again. So, I'm trying to be even-handed because there isn't a lot of even-handedness going on at the moment. There's a lot of entrenchment, which is very much of the zeitgeist anyway, both socially and politically. And that doesn't really help matters, I wouldn't say.
No, absolutely. There was a point I found interesting in there, which I'm going to use as a slightly clumsy segue. You talked about the draw of series against Sri Lanka, and equally the even-numbered years when there is the World Cup, the European Championships, the Olympics as well, of course.
Yeah.
And how cricket can drift from the back pages to sort of subsections of the sports in various newspapers. And on that point, as I said, this is a slightly clumsy segue. Someone like Rory Burns, just for example, is coming into the England setup potentially for Sri Lanka, and all the pressure that goes with that, being the new opener, replacing Cook, etc., etc. But for me, that's almost the perfect situation because Sri Lanka isn't a big draw. So the media spotlight isn't quite as intense. It's away from home. The football season's in full swing. So in a way, although it's a very much a challenge playing in the subcontinent, if you are a player like Rory Burns or whoever coming into the England side, it's almost the kind of situation that maybe you want, isn't it? The glare isn't quite so bright, and everybody knows you're new to the team. And
well, I think that's a very strong point, and I've got a lot of time for it. It very much depends if the selectors are also sensitive to that, to the challenge that Rory, if he's picked, would have in that situation. I was out in Bangladesh on the tour in 2016, and Ben Duckett, who is a terrifically talented cricketer, I mean, he hits a ball beautifully cleanly, but he had spent his entire professional career pretty much in the second division, opening the batting against seam bowlers. And in his first test innings, Mehdi Hassan is on a dust bowl, and the first ball he faces turns 2 feet past his outside edge at pace, fizzing off the pitch. And he thinks, hang on, I've had absolutely no preparation for this at all. And then he's instantly labelled. I mean, almost instantly. I think it probably took about 2 innings before people started writing him off and saying, we can't play spin. Now England play half their series away on non-spinning pitches, and they play all their series at home on non-spinning pitches. So you're talking really about a quarter of the amount of test matches you're going to play in these very alien and unfavourable conditions. So if the selectors are patient and understand that, which I don't think they really were, to be honest, with Ben Duckett, then it's fine. You'll go under the radar, and indeed, look, he might prosper because there might be slow-turning wickets. He doesn't play spin badly, and he might get off to a decent start out there. And then when you go to the West Indies, it is palpably easier while the tracks do turn. Yeah. They're slow turners, and then they're places where a good batsman should be able to score runs. So if time and faith is invested in him, which it needs to be, because England, frankly, aren't certain about Jennings, or at least I don't think they should be, and they don't have Cook anymore, so you've got to find 2 openers, you've got to give them time and space to operate. It could be the perfect environment for him. Like I say, all of that will depend on the selectors. And I think, actually, the new selection regime, which I have perhaps unfairly dubbed Scaramanga and Knick-Knack, but largely because of the sort of evil way that Ed is there with his dark glasses on, looking like he's sort of plotting some assassination, and then James Taylor's next to him about 4 inches below him, taking instruction. It looks like, and it's way more complicated than that, and it sounds disrespectful. It's not meant to. But I think they've got off to a really good start. I think they've picked players on ability as much as anything else. So whilst everybody else thinks they know all about selection, we're all experts in cricket because we've all got our county teams. We watch, we all check out the scores and look at the averages. The fact of the matter is we haven't actually watched. I get to see quite a lot of them because of my job, but a lot of fans haven't seen a lot of red ball cricket around the country, so they won't have seen a lot of players. And James Taylor has, and Ed Smith as well. But James has seen all these guys. And I think the selection of Jos Buttler indicated just how much they've got an eye for talent. And if you put the best players into the team, then you'll get the best team. Sometimes we overthink these things and say, well, he's only got 2 red ball centuries in the last 6 years, and forget that they see him day in, day out. They know how he hits a ball. They know what his temperament's like, crucially. And it's come good, hasn't it? I mean, he has played a variety of innings this summer in white ball cricket. I'm thinking of that incredible match-winning 100 against Australia when England sealed the series 5-0, but they were dead and buried, and he ushered the tail quite brilliantly to victory. And then he's had to do similar things. He had a partnership with Don Bess and a losing cause. He had a very splendid innings at Headingley, which put England in a very strong position against Pakistan. Got 100 in a losing cause, got crucial 80-odd in the first innings at the Oval. They're all different innings. They're all symptomatic of the man as much as the talent. You marry the man and the talent together and you get a really good cricketer. And I think that Ed Smith and James Taylor have got an eye for that. Not every time will selections come off because they're dealing with human beings who are fallible. They're not robots, and they don't perform the way fans think they're going to do, because they've seen in the paper that he averages 80 in first-class cricket this season. Ipso facto, he's going to score 100, because it doesn't work like that. But, I think England have got that side of things going well. They've got selection going well. They've got a large pool of talent. They do have these holes, and it is baffling that Rory Burns hasn't got in the team yet, but you can sort of see why if you think back to, they want to see if Jennings is going to make it. And Cook was not going to be dropped, so Burns comes in Sri Lanka. If he doesn't, if Burns doesn't come in Sri Lanka, then I'll send a stiffly worded letter to Scaramanga and then await the golden gun response, I suppose.
So to focus on that point, do you think one thing that Ed Smith and James Taylor are maybe bringing to the table, which perhaps wasn't there before, is a little more context to what players are doing around any form of cricket? Obviously, Jos Buttler, the narrative when he was first recalled was, he's only played IPL, he's only really played white ball cricket. Well, as we said, he was called in off the back of a good IPL, which had its merits to a point, but it's very different for obviously 5-day tests. As it happened, he's done brilliantly. He's probably been one of the highlights of the summer. And it's almost, as you alluded to, Ed Smith and James Taylor are giving that context?
Well, I think they are for reasons that they're contrasting people, and they left cricket at contrasting times. You know, Ed's hasn't been playing cricket for quite a while, but he's still connected to that generation of players, and he's seen a lot of Test cricket because of his job commentating on TMS. But James knows these guys. He's been on Lions tours. He's been coaching. He's played with so many of them. It's only a couple of years since James was playing himself. So between them, they have a really profound understanding of the issues that bedevil county cricketers and what is difficult. And this isn't just as simple as you play in April and May and you play in September. Therefore, it's difficult. Because actually, you know, I've seen county cricket in my job, both writing and commentating, all the way through this summer. I've been at games in April, May, June, July, and I will be going in September. So it's not just as simple as saying if it's May, the ball nibbles about. It genuinely doesn't. In April, sometimes you get a flat track because they're beautifully well created for the start of the season. The grass has been shaved off, the weather's good, and it's not too warm, the ball's not swinging that much. You can actually get quite boring draws. You need to be able to put all these things in context rather than just read things off the newspaper's averages, which actually England selectors used to do in the 70s and 80s. You know, they'd have a look at the Daily Telegraph and go, oh, right, you know, Mark Benson's got 100. We'll bung him in, poor fella. Now, that's not how it works. Also, we do operate with a really exciting ball, the Duke's ball. I don't want to see it go. I love it. But it does it's superb. It makes for thrilling cricket, but it does disproportionately make opening the batting and batting at 3 difficult because it does so much more in that first 20 overs, as we all know, than it does later on. So Ollie Pope, who I think is an excellent cricketer and will play much more for England, has developed a reputation off the back of coming in after the ball, especially when you've got an opener like Rory Burns around and solid batsmen like Borthwick or what have you up the order, and Elgar. He's coming in when the ball's 40-something overs old. Yeah. It's a different proposition. And he bats very well, I have to say, in that situation. He bats the situation very well, and that's why they've picked him. And why wouldn't you? Because that's what you want. You want a good number 5 who knows how to build innings and is capable of going through the gears. But by the same token, don't be surprised if he's going to struggle if he comes in because England's top order has been blown away and he's coming in at 15 for 2. And the ball's jagging around and moving miles because no one's going to look good in that situation, you know? So, and I do genuinely believe that Taylor and Smith understand those issues. I'm not saying the previous selectors didn't, but I think they understand them better, perhaps, than other ones did because they're so recently gone from cricket and they're so enmeshed within the system already of the UCB system from all the different age levels and through the Lions and what have you. And that is, it's kind of crucial, isn't it, really, rather than Ted Dexter really would have had a clue. I mean, absolutely not a clue. The game was changing really fast in the 80s and he had nothing to go on but a few averages. And England didn't have a scouting network to speak of. They just simply went on numbers and a bit of gut feel. And so, these are all really positive things. I think English cricket, look, I don't want to underestimate the challenge that comes from playing cricket in April and May, and I do think that there needs to be more county cricket in June and July. And the suggestion is that one of the decent byproducts of the new competition is that with them playing so much of it in August, there will be county championship fixtures, 3 of them in July, which is going to be really helpful, and a couple in June, so you've now got 5 of your 14 fixtures slap bang in the middle of summer. But you also still need to learn how to play against a moving ball. And I'm afraid this is England. We can't transfer ourselves over to Australia and say, well, isn't it brilliant? We get to play in glorious weather from November to February on flat decks. And that's not the way it is. We've got a small window where our pitches are rock hard and batsmen can prosper. And on either side, it's a different proposition.
Yeah, it's all very valid points, and hopefully we'll see that come to fruition a little more over the winter. Hopefully people will get the opportunity and the patience, and obviously next summer as well, because as we've said, that top 3 is open to question, and the implication seems to be that they will take Jennings to Sri Lanka, based on a few of the comments Ed Smith has made. We seem to be in agreement that Rory Burns should be on the plane. Have you got your eye on anybody else? Obviously, Nick Gubbins has
Yeah.
had problems. I think he was injured earlier in the year and his form hasn't quite been there. Same for Sam Robson, unfortunately. James Vince has been talked about as a possible opener because he plays spin well. Who would it be for you? Who would you have in that first test in Gaul as the 1, 2, 3?
It's really tough. It's really, really tough. I think what they would go with is Jennings, Burns and Moeen on the basis that I think Moeen at 3 on slower and spinning tracks, they can get their head around that. They can see that. I don't know that that's a long-term solution. I'm not sure that Moeen at 3 against Australia, bowling quick at him with a new ball, is a sustainable long-term future. I think they really want Joe Clark to come through. I saw him out in Barbados, and I sensed there was a lot of positive energy for him from the selection panel, especially people like Andy Flower, really wanting Joe Clark to do well. He hasn't had the best season. He's not had the worst season. He's had sort of indifferent, in and out kind of season. But he's a player of great promise. Looking slightly further down the line, but not yet ready, Harry Brook at Yorkshire, I think, is going to be someone who will watch his career with interest. But you can never be sure how these things turn out. I mean, Hasib Hamid I don't want to use the word tragic because we're talking about cricket here, but when you're averaging 9.5 over a long period of time as well, I mean, in the best part of 18 innings.
And relative to what everybody expected of him as well, and obviously then the injuries kicked in.
Well, exactly. I mean, he was somebody, I think, when we saw him in India, we thought, brilliant, nailed on. The next 16 years, we got an opening batsman. The injury, I think, didn't help, and then his career is stalled. Doesn't mean he can't get it back, but he can't really be in the frame at the minute. There aren't a lot of other obvious opening batsman candidates. In terms of a bolter, a really unlikely one, but a worthy one, might be Daryl Mitchell of Worcester. I know that would seem strange, perhaps, to some people, but he's a solid professional, and at a time, I don't think there's any point in trying to make players something that they're not. So a lot of talk of say, put Bairstow up the order, make him open. He's not an opening batsman. Being an opening batsman requires a very specific mindset. So I'm afraid you've just got to look within the group of people who are used to opening the batting. Nick Gubbins, that you mentioned, also had a great series out in Barbados, and I think they really wanted his season to go better than it has done. But as you say, he was afflicted by injuries. Going back to your answer, I would say Jennings, Burns, Moeen Ali, and I don't think that's the strongest 1, 2, 3 England will ever have had. It might have been one of the more speculative ones, but it is what it is because there aren't a lot of obvious candidates to open the batting at the moment. And then after that, life gets a lot easier. Root, Bairstow, Stoke, Butler, Curran, it kind of like picks itself, doesn't it? Really, and then I heard Vic Marks suggest, and I think this is a very interesting ponderable, though we might all be thinking, well, Adil Rashid will surely be out there now because he's got a couple of wickets to go or whatever. Vic's view is that actually on pitches that turn as much as they can do in Sri Lanka, especially at Gaul, the leg spin is a bit of a luxury. You could turn it too far, weirdly. And what you want is the control of a finger spinner. So I think that will bring Leach back into the frame quite significantly. And also, he's had a bit more overs under his belt at the start of the Indian leg of the summer. Ed Smith sat down with a journalist and was fabulously articulate in explaining his reasoning for why Rashid was picked. It was, we think we need someone who can turn the ball away from the right-handers. India's got a lot of right-handers. So that then brings to mind either leg spinners or left-arm spinners. The left-arm spinning options are Dawson and Leach, and the leg spinners are some not yet ready but promising youngsters like Parkinson. And then he even mentioned Joe Denley in dispatches. Don't be surprised if he gets selected for the tour, because he could open, even though he's been batting middle order, but he has opened in the past. But then, so he said about Leach, he's only bowled 37 overs since the start of May. Now, it's very hard to argue against that. He'd had terrible time with awfully bad luck with injuries and concussion, for example. He's through that now, and he's had some splendid performances for Somerset match winning. Was it 8 for the other day? I mean, absolutely extraordinary. So I would say he's on the plane, and then it's about the balance of your side. How do you fit? Do you have 4 seamers, or are you going to fit the extra batsman in? Because you could put the extra batsman in with Pope in the middle of your order. You've got Moeen batting up at 3, and Moeen and Leach as your spinners, and perhaps give Broad or Anderson a rest for Sri Lanka because they want to manage their workload longer term. Broad, we've had this cracked rib issue, so I wouldn't be surprised if he might be given that tour off, and you end up with your seamers are Curran, Stoke and Anderson, with Wokes as backup, potentially playing even. Pack the side with an extra batsman.
Yeah.
And two spinners with Joe Root as backup, which that looks to me like a decent side. I mean, let's be under no illusions. So it's not easy to go to Sri Lanka and win. England don't do that very often. Most teams don't do that very often. So expectations need to be just dampened down a bit after beating the number one side 4-1. Because that's how Test cricket is now. It's become a little bit one-sided, and away tour victories are tougher and tougher again, aren't they?
Do you think Dom Bess gets another look?
Depends how many you want to take, really. I mean, in a 16-man squad, I would be surprised if Rashid doesn't go on tour. And then you've got Leet and Moeen, so you've got 3 spinners there already with Root bowling part-timers. So is there really space for an extra spinner, or are you actually looking to ensure you've got enough batting cover in case of broken fingers and similar? And do you want the backup wicketkeeper? Because if you decide that Butler can keep, is there even space for folks? You'll need backup seamers in Woke. So I would be surprised. I would think Bess would go on a Lions tour, but I would be surprised if he was in the main squad. I think he's got quite a lot of development to do. Off spins are really, it's a tricky art. And if you were going to compare his returns to, say, Amaverdi at Surrey, who's taken 35 wickets this season on pitches that haven't necessarily been as conducive. The oval's not bad for spin bowling, but it's not, it's not Raging Turner, it's certainly not Sidra bad, So, Verdi would be a more effective spinner if you were just looking for someone who's going to take wickets, where Bess is very useful. He's a great fielder, and he's a really, really handy batsman. So my feeling is that Bess has got quite a bit to learn, and his next 2 or 3 years of development are going to be key. I don't think it's the last we've seen of him in an England shirt, but I think it's a bit early to be getting him in, to be honest.
Yeah, and Verdi was the one I just as we were talking there, just seeing who the most successful English qualified spinner outside of Moeen and Rashid. Verdi's, as you said, 35 wickets this year. There's not really many spinners, just quickly browsing through, who've done better. Simon Harmer's the only one, really. Obviously, he's not English qualified. So. Yeah.
Well, Verdi's a very interesting case in point. What Verdi has, if you see him live, and the best way to judge Verdi and what he brings to the team is go and watch him from square leg or, halfway down the pitch, from side on. He has dip. Not all the time, but when he's bowling well and he gets through his action, he gets that ball to sink. And that is such a crucial part of being able to bowl spin, and especially on the subcontinent, because you've got to be getting people unsure of your length, pushing forward and getting the ball that spits and turns, what have you. At the moment, Bess is a bit too flat. In just the same way as, if you think about Liam Dawson, just a little bit too flat, not quite enough deceit in the air. And Verdi's doing this at a very young age. What counts against Verdi is that his batting is very, to call it an afterthought is an understatement. If he plays and Anderson plays, Anderson's up to number 10, and he's not the best. He's a willing fielder, but he's got a lot to do to get better at fielding. But he's young. Who was Amaverdi at the beginning of this summer? No one had heard of him at all, and suddenly he's potentially the best English qualified spinner in the country. So let's not rush him or pressurise him. I think at this stage there's time enough, and I think, as you and I both know, you've only got to look at the career of Graham Swan to know that bowling off spin is a very complicated art form that you don't expect to master at the age of 21, 22. You've got a lot of cricket to understand changes of pace, how to react to different pitches, different situations, and that you're never going to have that at 21 with the best will in the world. So, I think he's another one that ought to be taken on a Lions tour, get into the system, get intense coaching, and be able to pick the braids of someone like Sakleen Mushtaq and stuff like that. That's his development path at the moment. We tend in England to get very excited very quickly at the moment, and we're picking younger and younger players. It's a very unusual time in English cricket, but in the last couple of years, under 20-year-olds and under are being put into the side, which is a positive development in one sense, because if they're good enough, they're old enough, but also we've got to be able to give them space to fail as well, because they will do.
And as we've said, hopefully that is what England have now with Smith and Taylor, people who will be willing to give people a chance, and maybe that frees them up to play their natural game because they're not fearful of being out of the squad for the next test or the next tour.
Well, that's exactly what I think is happening now, and also, it's such a better setup now. And I know it's been going for a little while, but I hark back again to the 70s, 80s. When you got picked for England, you walked in the day before the game, often with players you didn't know, feeling quite out of place in a hostile environment, have 2 bad test matches, you go off and you're playing for your county again, and there's nothing in between. Whereas now, Ollie Pope will be playing. If he's not on the tour, I'll be surprised. But if he wasn't on the tour, then he'd be in the Lions tour, and he'd be working with the likes of Andy Flower, and he'd see James Taylor around, and he'd be being monitored by people who have created a pathway that runs from county cricket and below all the way up to the top, which is coherent. Fans are impatient and they want the team to do well all the time. Sometimes you've got to recognise, as I said earlier, players aren't robots. They've got to encounter different situations. And the other side's also allowed to be quite good. Other teams are allowed to play well. Australia are allowed to have 92-mile-per-hour bowlers who fling it up at your throat in unfamiliar conditions. And you can't expect the player that you've got, just because he plays for England and you're a patriot, that therefore he's going to be able to handle this, because it's not as simple as that. That's just the way elite sport is, and cricket more so than any other, because in football you stick everyone down on a pitch, they kick a ball about. In England, I know I'm being massively simplistic, but in cricket you don't do that. You take them onto surfaces that they've never seen before. And when they're 21, they haven't had the time to see them. Ollie Pope's had a season in Australia. How much cricket has he played in Sri Lanka or India or the UAE, Bangladesh, West Indies? Next to none. So the difference, the challenge that you get in unfamiliar conditions with bowlers bowling in ways that you have never encountered before, you've got to give these people time to adapt. It just doesn't happen overnight.
I think on that note, we will wrap things up. Daniel, it's been fantastic to have you on once again to recap the summer, to look ahead to Sri Lanka. Some interesting talking points moving ahead, not just for the next tour, but even beyond that, as we've said. You said you'd be back on the BBC for the end of the county season. Do you know which matches you're covering or anything like that?
Well, I'm back on for finals day, which I'm very much looking forward to.
Yeah, of course, Saturday, of course.
Yeah, it's a crazy day, that. I mean, I'm adamant that Sussex are going to win. They're the best team in the country. I think they've got the best bowling attack in world domestic T20. I know it's a big call, isn't it? But Archer, Mills, Jordan, Briggs. If they had Rashid Khan, even the better. But they've got Beer, who I rate. I think their semi-final against Somerset's going to be brilliant, because Somerset tonk it around all out of the park, and they just keep batting all the way down to number 9 and smashing it everywhere. So I think we could be in for a great day there. It always is. It's a lunatic day. And then I will be back around for the last game of the season. Whether I'm on air or not, I don't know, but I will be demanding that I go to Surrey to watch my beloved Surrey get given the pennant by the reigning champions. They'll have to hand it over to the new champions of the Oval for our first title in 16 years. And I will sink quite a lot of wine, and I will shed quite a few tears, and revel in the enduring majesty of the county championship, which for me, I know this all sounds absolutely mad, in a wonderful summer of international cricket, in which possibly the highlight was England losing to Scotland at Edinburgh, one of the most joyous occasions I've ever watched a game of cricket played in. It was absolutely charming at the Grange. But still, to me, the highlight of the summer will be Surrey winning the county championship, because this is something about cricket fans that I think perhaps the authorities need to understand a little bit better, is that we invest a lot in our team, and our teams don't win very often. The championship gets handed around different counties a lot of the time. So for a Surrey fan to win the first title in 16 years feels more important to me than England beating India in a bilateral test series, which sounds crazy, doesn't it? When I'm on TMS, and maybe I'll be shouted at for that. And, next year, if Surrey are not doing very well, then I'll be entirely absorbed in nothing but the Ashes. But I'm gonna see out summer in a blaze of glory at the Oval, and let my hair down and just thoroughly enjoy it. And hopefully I won't be on air. I'll just be in the bar in the pavilion eating a Surrey stuffed Yorkshire, which is the title of a dish that you can buy in the Surrey pavilion. It's looked like an act of terrible arrogance for 16 years, But this year, having beaten them twice and being county champion is going to taste fantastic.
And I cannot blame you for a second.
Thank you.
Well, Daniel, thank you very much again for your time. It's wonderful to have you on. Enjoy Surrey's imminent championship. I think you can then enjoy all that success. Enjoy finals day.
Rob, thanks ever so much. It's been a pleasure.